One thing I wanted to talk about, for anybody that wants to pay attention, is how the canoe moves. So what we're doing, the stroke is moving the canoe forward. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about what the top hand does to help the canoe move forward faster, what the bottom hand, the pull arm, does to move the canoe forward. Like we talked about on Tuesday, you're not bringing the blade to you. You're not pulling water. As much as we say pull water, realistically you're not pulling water. You're planting the blade in a stationary position and you're pulling yourself up to that blade. So you're not pulling water. You're actually more likely doing a sideways pull-up. You're pulling yourself up to that. You're bringing your seat up next to your blade. You're not bringing your blade back to your seat. So there's a little bit of difference in mentality. So what we're doing when we're moving a canoe is we're placing the blade, we're moving the canoe up to the blade. We place the blade, we move the canoe up to the blade. All that's happening with that bottom arm. So that's what that bottom arm is doing. The bottom arm is pulling us up. We're pulling up. Now we've talked a lot about the top hand, because the top hand's been way underutilized for a lot of you guys, depending on how you learned the stroke and what stroke you learned. We talk about putting weight on the blade. Now what does that mean? I've been talking to Josh Creighton last year at Ironman Champs. We were on a safety boat together during the women's race. You know, we got a chance to talk a little bit about this and that. One of the things we were talking about is what is it that makes Danny so good? Well, there are a lot of things that make Danny good. Well, one of the things that make Danny better than the rest of us is Danny has amazing balance. And what that amazing balance does is that allows him to put a lot of weight on the blade. So just what the hell does that mean, putting weight on the blade? What we mean by putting weight on the blade is you're actually transferring the force. Gravity pulls on all of us, pulls us down. That causes a force that goes straight down. Some of us have a little more force going down in the canoe than the rest of us. But that weight pulls down, so that force is going down. What Danny's able to do with his balance is transfer that weight up onto the top of his blade. So what that does is that makes the boat rise up. There's less force pushing down on the boat, so there's less surface area in the water, so there's less friction, less resistance. So he lifts it up and it scoots across the top rather than planing through the water. Because as you guys know, the more surface area that's in the water, the more surface area that touches the water, that water actually causes friction on the boat and slows the boat down. So ideally, we want to get the boats up and out of the water and keep them on top of the water rather than planing through the water. So what Danny's able to do with his top arm is put pressure on the blade. And again, what does that mean? How do you transfer the weight from here to here? Well, think of it like this. This is our top arm. Right? I've got it raised right where I want it. I've got it on top of here. What you're doing is I'm taking the weight that right now is in my ass, and I'm going to push down on this hand, and I'm going to transfer. I'm putting all that weight from here onto here. So what that does is it allows the boat to come up and out. So if you're pushing over the top, if you're putting weight on the blade, what that means is you're transferring that force from your seat to the blade. It makes the boat lighter, makes it rise up, makes it more buoyant, makes it run faster. So when we push over the top, that's what we're doing. When we pull, it's coming up forward. So we push over the top, let the boat rise up, make it light. We pull with the bottom to move the boat up to where the blade is. So the mentality you want to have is when you plant your blade, think of it like you're planting a quick dry cement. And the second that it's planted, that cement is set. And you're going to pull yourself up to that cement. You're going to make it easier for you to pull yourself up by putting some of your weight on that blade. Visualize like a pole vaulter. You guys have all seen the Olympics at least once in your lives. You've all seen a pole vault at least once in your life. What is that guy doing? He's got a nice long lever arm. He plants that lever arm and he pulls himself up to the lever arm and he presses over the top to take his weight off of his feet and place it onto his pole. We're doing the same thing. We're placing the weight from our ass and putting it onto the blade. So we're pushing over the top to transfer that weight. So we're going to get the boat up and running. Now what we don't want to do is we don't want to counteract what we just did. So once we place that weight on the blade and we get the canoe to rise up, we've got less surface area in the water creating drag now. We don't want to counteract that by going into our next stroke and allowing our body weight to drop, because then we're going to push the boat right back to where we put it before. So we don't want to take the bounce out. We don't want to have that constant rise up, drop off, rise up, drop off. Ideally what you're looking for when you find that glide is the boat rises up out of the water and skims across the top nice and smooth. So when we talk about using that top hand, getting that body involved, putting weight on the blade, that's what we're talking about. Get the weight out of the seat, get the weight on the blade. Move yourself forward across the top of the water. If you're not utilizing that top hand and you're just pulling, you're going to plane straight through the water. Which you might go fast if your crew's strong enough, but they could go even faster if there was less resistance from the water itself. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's what we're talking about when we say use the top hand, get your whole body involved, push over the top. You know you're putting weight on the blade, you know you're using that top arm, that top hand, if you can feel it in your chest and your lats. So this motion, you're actually going to contract your pecs, you're going to contract your lats, because you're going to be pushing down. Just like I said, visualize it. Think about what it takes to get your weight off your ass and on your hand here. I'm pushing straight down. I'm not using my legs. I'm pushing down, using my chest right here, using my lats right here. Pulling myself up. While I'm doing that, I'm pulling through the rest of the body. So that's when I've got that front foot planted. And again, just think of it like you're trying to pick up something heavy or you're trying to pull yourself up out of a ditch. Anybody that's ever walked up a steep grade and there's somebody up ahead of you and they say, here, give me your hand. You reach up to them, what do? You plant that front foot, right? So you can get, again, now you're going to take the weight off of your ass and put it on your foot so you can get yourself up and going. So you're pulling here, you're pushing here. It's the same thing. What we're trying to do is make your seat as light as possible. You want to get as much of your weight out of the seat onto the blade so the canoe can rise up and run light. Does that make sense to everybody? I feel like I did a really crappy job explaining that, but hopefully it's good.
That was a good description.
Okay.
For the old timers that have been paddling, that's just, basically at least popping the boat.
Yeah, that's the pop and glide. That's the pop part of the pop and glide.
Popping and rising. Steersman, when you're paddling, the boat feels like it's going and it sinks. That's because you're sitting
all
back
the way
down.
Down in the boat.
You're getting back down. You might pop and go, but you're sitting back down.
So any questions about the pop, about putting weight on the blade? Alright. Anybody? Paul, you always have good questions.
No,
you always help me to explain to everybody else.
No. I had a long day. No questions.
Alright.
You ever hear what the crap is he talking about?